This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. For a couple weeks now. And so, so if you want to introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And what I mainly do is I help people with autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses reverse their symptoms naturally. And so I help them do that through a combination of things, functional lab testing, and also holistic health practices, everything from nutrition and stress management to exercise, supplementation, and kind of everything in between.
Okay. So when you say autoimmune, I just want to make sure I'm right. What are some like popular is that like what is it? Gluten sensitivity? I forgot what it's called.
Celiac disease?
Yeah, celiac. Is that considered? Yeah.
Yes. So what's crazy is that autoimmune diseases are reaching like epidemic levels. They keep increasing every single year. So right now, the studies vary, but they're increasing at about a 12% rate annually. And now there's over 100 different autoimmune diseases. So they just keep growing and more people keep getting them. So many different ones out there, but some of the more common ones that you've probably heard of would be things like rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes. We've got multiple sclerosis, as you mentioned, celiac disease. So those are a few.
So so an autoimmune disease, I guess is it a disease or is it like a condition? I mean, is there like a cure for most of these things?
Well, if you're talking to a conventional medical doctor, they will say that there is no cure. And also I can't legally say that there is a cure for any diseases, right? We just can't say that. And so technically it's a disease because doctors have been able to say, okay, if you have these markers and these symptoms, and we can put you in this nice little box and say that this is called rheumatoid arthritis. Therefore, now we can give you prednisone or some sort of medication to help reduce your symptoms so that you can keep living with the disease, but not feel as crappy. Right? That's the conventional approach to things. When we're talking about functional medicine and holistic health, we're looking at it and saying, oh, interesting, your body's doing weird stuff. Your body's attacking your joints with rheumatoid arthritis. So you're having joint pain and inflammation, but why are you having that? You weren't born with this. So what entered into your body or what happened in your life to where all of a sudden your immune system is kind of pissed off and you're having this response. And so we look for those things that are what we call like the root causes of the autoimmune disease, which are typically multifactorial. And we can get into those if you want to. And then when we have that information, that's where we address whether that's a gut infection, stress management, nutrition, et cetera, to help then start to get rid of those symptoms. So can somebody cure it? Again, I can't say that, but what I can say is I used to have autoimmune issues. I don't deal with any symptoms of an autoimmune disease. I've had many clients come to me who, using rheumatoid arthritis as an example, again, I'm thinking of one girl in particular who her doctor kept saying, your wrist is deteriorating. You have to get surgery. She was in her 20s. She said, I don't want to get surgery on my wrist yet. We worked together and within 3 months, her wrist healed, didn't have the rheumatoid arthritis anymore. Was able to go back to her normal life, fully functioning, didn't have to have her husband help her make her food anymore, was able to button up her pants, was able to get back into photography. So it's totally possible.
Okay. So I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding of what autoimmune is. So that's like, and you kind of touched on it already. Is that so? The immune system basically goes in it overworks, or it attacks itself, or like how do we determine if it's an autoimmune?
Right. So the immune system is trying to protect us all the time, right? On a daily basis from any sorts of toxins, viruses, bacteria, pathogens, whatever's coming into our body. And yeah, as you stated, it's kind of like an over response to things. So instead of just destroying those pathogens, now it starts to attack the joints if it's rheumatoid arthritis. It starts to attack the pancreas if it's diabetes. It starts to attack the thyroid if it's Hashimoto's, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there's a connection somewhere between diet or environment and this. I mean, I would think it's probably both, because I think of like celiacs. I feel like that's mostly diet related, or at least my understanding of it is. But then something like, so mold, because I feel like most people would have a response to mold, right? Like that's not necessarily an autoimmune thing if you get sick being around mold. Like where does the mold and the Lyme and all that stuff come in? Is that still considered autoimmune?
Mold can be a root cause of autoimmunity.
Okay.
Yeah, because mold is going to affect everybody very differently. So studies show that somewhere around 50% of buildings have mold. So we're all really being exposed to it. And so if you are living in a home that has a significant amount of a toxic mold in it that's producing mycotoxins, which are like these invisible toxins that come from the mold, and we're breathing those in on a daily basis, we're getting them into our bodies. It depends on your genetics, depends on the type of mold, the amount of mold in the house, how long you've been exposed, and your prior health history. All of those things are going to determine how your body responds. Because I've worked with many people who, the mom of a family comes to me. Let's say she's got lupus, which is an autoimmune disease, and usually more than one, maybe Hashimoto's as well. So she's got all these symptoms. She's been chronically ill for 5 years, 10 years. One of the kids is fine. The other kid has asthma. Maybe somebody else in the household has headaches, and the husband claims that he's fine. He doesn't have any symptoms. So, and a lot of times that can create issues with the family because the husband's like, oh, there's nothing wrong in the house. Like, I feel fine. But it can really impact everybody very, very differently based upon those things that I just listed. So the mold toxin will create inflammation in the body. It will create oxidative stress or oxidative damage. And each mycotoxin can affect the organs and systems differently. So let's say we have black mold or aspergillus, which is going to produce aflatoxin. This is one of the worst. This is going to affect every single organ and system. The brain and the nervous system, the heart, the kidneys, the liver, the immune system, all of that. Maybe somebody has gliotoxin in their body, which is more usually like the nervous system and cognition. They might have more brain fog. They might have anxiety, depression stuff going on. But either way, like it's a major immune suppressor or immune dysregulator. So people can then start to develop all these weird mystery symptoms: joint pain, brain fog, anxiety, insomnia, digestive issues, nasal drip, allergies, skin issues, psoriasis, rashes. I mean, it's so wide ranging that then the doctors don't know to think about that. They don't know to ask the right questions. So then all of a sudden, these people eventually get some sort of autoimmune diagnosis or a diagnosis for fibromyalgia, or the doctor just says like, yeah, you've got chronic allergies. You just need to take some allergy medication. And that's usually a story with people with mold.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get a general understanding of autoimmune.
Yeah. So
that was pretty in depth. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Okay. So I think everybody can understand pretty much that they know that mold, especially mold black mold is a bad thing.
So autoimmunity is multifactorial. That's why it's really challenging for people to get rid of the symptoms fully, because it's not just mold, it's not just nutrition. It's going to be many, many different factors, which is why it's important to kind of look at your entire life. So that could be, there's always going to be a gut component involved, because like have you heard of leaky gut before? Yeah. So leaky gut. So like that gut barrier, essentially having holes in it, food particles, toxins are getting into the bloodstream. We've got bacteria, different parasites, different things that shouldn't be in the microbiome, an overabundance of things or not enough healthy bacteria. All of that is pretty much always associated with autoimmune diseases. Throw in some poor lifestyle stuff, poor diet, lack of exercise, sunlight, sleep, nutrient deficiencies. We've got stress. About 80% of people with autoimmune diseases report significant stress, emotional stress before their diagnosis. And environmental toxins, which includes the mold, which includes heavy metals, includes BPAs, pesticides, fragrances, all that stuff. So it's like all of that is under that umbrella of root causes.
Okay. So when you work with people, since there's so many factors and variations, how do you even start? Like, what do you even do? What you just go through their lifestyle, their diet, their environment? I mean, I don't know. There's like so many different things.
Yeah, exactly. It takes asking the right questions is really important, because I've seen people come to me and, they were sick for 20 years and not one person ever asked, hey, do you have any musty smells in your house? Hey, have you ever been bitten by a tick? Do you spend a lot of time outdoors? Have you ever had a weird rash? Have you ever seen mold in your house? So if you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to be looking for the right things. So being really curious and asking a ton of questions, doing a really in-depth analysis of someone's health history and all the things they've tried, what they eat, what they do, all of that's important. And then based on that information, I'll order functional labs for them. So usually that's going to be, some of my go-tos are a GI map test, which is a stool sample to look at gut health, an organic acids test, also kind of a gut-based test as well, but a urine sample, going to look at some other things like fungus and nutrient markers, a hair tissue mineral analysis test to look at heavy metals and minerals, blood work, and then if needed, if the symptoms are there, the history is there, we might look into something like mycotoxins for mold or Lyme disease or something deeper than that.
Okay.
So that's the initial, let's look at the root causes piece.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very in-depth initial test. Like, that's like, I feel like you're going to know everything that you need to know. Or I don't know, maybe. So a person, they're having these issues, whatever this is, and I think the environmental stuff is pretty obvious, the mold or whatever it is. But what really fascinates me is like the variation in diet, because you have like these, like, and I don't know if allergy, like if somebody's allergic, like let's just say peanuts, because that's like a common thing. I think that's different from autoimmune, right? That's not like the same, like an allergy to something is not the same as what we're talking about here, right? Or is it? I don't know, because I feel like maybe celiac is technically allergic reaction to a thing. But to go off on a tinfoil hat tangent here, there's a lot of people think that the celiac, all it is a reaction to glyphosate that's sprayed on the crops before, like the wheat and stuff, before we, and then we eat it. So I don't know where you fall out on that spectrum, but yeah. So the environmental, I think, is kind of like, I feel like that's an obvious thing, but maybe not. But then it's like the diet, because two people can have the same diet of the same thing and have completely different reactions. That's what is kind of like fascinating to me about this.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that I think a lot of people don't understand clearly is the difference between a food allergy and a food sensitivity. So a lot of people will just use the word allergy, but an allergy is an IgE response, which is usually long lasting. Sometimes they can change. I just had a client, all of a sudden he's not allergic to fish anymore, which is really cool. But usually an allergy is like this full blown reaction of hives, or your throat starts closing up, right? Like that anaphylactic shock, like it's life threatening. Usually people are born with it. You can develop them later on in life as well as your body changes. But then we have food sensitivities, which are more typical with an autoimmune disease. And the reason we develop a food sensitivity, so this is an IgG response, is because of leaky gut. So when we have the gut barrier and that starts to kind of open up, we have these holes in the gut lining. Now those food particles that we're trying to eat and digest will go through that gut barrier and get into the bloodstream. When they get into the bloodstream, the immune system's like, what the heck is this? This is a foreign invader. It's not supposed to be here. I'm going to attack it because I don't understand what this is. It's danger to me. When the body attacks it, it creates widespread inflammation. That widespread inflammation then shows up as various symptoms. For some people, it might be a skin rash. For some people, it might be a headache, bloating, joint pain, right? We get to start to just get all these weird symptoms that come up from these food reactions or sensitivities. These food sensitivities can be healed by removing the food from the diet for a certain amount of time to allow the immune memory to reset, and by closing up the gut lining and healing whatever else is going on in the gut, usually, like I said earlier, parasites, fungus, whatever. So a lot of people will get hung up on these food sensitivity tests, like, oh, I got to take all these foods out of my diet and I can't eat them anymore because they give me brain fog. When in reality, you've got a gut issue going on. And so if you fix that gut issue, you remove that food for long enough, you can usually reintroduce that food back into the diet. And I actually help people do that without testing. So I don't like to waste people's money on food sensitivity testing unless, as like a last resort effort, we really needed to. But usually we actually just do it through taking out the most inflammatory foods, fixing all the other internal stuff, and then having them kind of test out foods on their own later on.
So I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is.
Yes.
So his daughter, I think him and both his daughter have done the carnivore. I guess it was like a carnivore diet or whatever. And he explained that like she had this really bad arthritis, and then she went to this diet, and then it basically healed it. And I guess this is how. I guess this is like how that works, or something like that might work.
Yes, and this is where people go way too extreme, in my opinion, and as they say, "Oh, carnivore diet healed me." Cool, but what about all the antioxidants that you're missing now from your produce? What about the fiber that you need, the prebiotic fiber that actually helps feed the trillions of gut bacteria in your body that help keep your immune system healthy, keep all these other things running properly? What about the fiber and the polyphenols and all the different nutrients, the phytonutrients for your hormones, for your liver? Like, there's a lot of benefit to eating those foods. And so if we can even just, like, if somebody was using the carnivore diet, I always highly encourage them, hey, start to try and bring back in some of that produce, because we're meant to eat more of a diverse diet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you are a fan of like prebiotics or probiotics or any kind of, like a greens drink. I know that maybe it's not the same thing, but I've been wanting to do the carnivore diet, man, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know if that's right. I mean, just to try it. I don't have any issues. I don't think I have any reason to really do it other than just to try it. But it's like, first of all, I feel like, eating meat or eggs or whatever it is that you're allowed to eat for the carnivore diet, doing that, several times a day is probably going to get old pretty quick. But then it's like also too, what you just said, that I think you need things that can't necessarily be found in that. Even if you supplement with like like some sort of green smoothie or whatever, I don't know if it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be the same thing.
Right. Yeah. I think it's so nuanced depending upon who you are. I think if you're a woman who has a menstrual cycle, you should absolutely not do the carnivore diet, because as soon as we start to take out all of those carbohydrates, we are depleting our sex hormones of things that they need to really thrive. You're going to start to lower your thyroid hormone function. Your progesterone's probably going to drop. You're going to stress your body out. It's going to think that's in more of a starvation mode. A man, on the other hand, or maybe a woman in menopause, would be able to handle that diet a lot easier. So that in itself is super nuanced. I'm thinking of a client right now who, she was totally healthy, totally normal. Her husband said, I want to do the carnivore diet. She goes, I'll do it with you. Does the carnivore diet. All of a sudden, health goes down the drain, like completely. It's having all sorts of weird symptoms, trouble swallowing, joint pain. She comes to me, she's like, I don't know what happened. I started the carnivore diet a few weeks ago, or I think it was like a month ago, and I just feel like crap. Her body was dumping oxalates. So she had oxalates in her body from a little bit of mold in her environment. And also, she was eating, there are oxalates in our food. She took everything out of her diet. And what can happen is something called oxalate dumping. Started having all these weird symptoms. We ran a test, looked at her oxalate levels. They were extremely high. And I was like, yeah, your body just started dumping all that stuff and kind of causing a lot of, like, wreaking a lot of havoc in your body.
So what would make it do that just from the carnivore diet? Like why is that a reaction to that?
hmm Because there's oxalates in certain nutrients in our food already, and so the body is kind of keeping this like stability. And then when we remove something completely like that, it starts to release them. It's kind of the basics of that.
But but how is that a react? Okay, so what are you referring to this as? What is this chemical, this compound?
An oxalate.
Yeah, and what does that do? Like, what's the purpose of that?
So they are, it's basically formed with calcium in the body. So you know what a kidney stone is?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what an oxalate is, and they can deposit in the different tissues of the body. So the joints, even within the muscles, the kidneys, and usually people will develop higher levels in their body if they have a lot of fungus in their body from either mold or candida. And we can also get them from our food. So if you change the intake really quickly, and so you drastically reduce that intake of oxalate rich foods. So she was eating like kale and like nuts and seeds and stuff like that. And she
Right.
changed it so drastically that all of a sudden she was getting like fatigue, muscle aches, just like generally feeling unwell from the oxalate dumping that started to occur by that massive change that happened when she took all of that food out.
Okay. So it's not the meat, it's the shift. It's the drastic shift.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about the other end of the spectrum? Like if you're doing I guess a vegan diet or no meat at all. I mean, there's got to be. I guess if it's the same shift to the same degree in the same proportion, you're probably going to have an issue, right? I mean, does it really matter what if it's meat or vegetarian or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a proponent of like everybody should eat meat because of the nutrients that you get from there, right? The amino acids, the ease of getting the amino acids instead of trying to get them from a bunch of really starchy foods. So that we don't overgrow candida in our bodies from all those excess starches. We're going to get easier B vitamins and different minerals when we're eating all of this meat as well. So that's my opinion. I do, meet people every once in a while who are vegan and they claim to feel healthy. I've also worked with a lot of ex-vegans who were vegans for 5 to 10 years, and then they're coming to me saying, yeah, I have the worst PMS. My hormones are a mess. I feel extremely fatigued. My gut is a mess. I'm bloated all the time. Like,
Yeah.
help me. And they're ready to get back on the meat train. And as soon as they do, they feel better.
Yeah, because I've heard people say before, and I don't know if you know anything about this or not, but I've heard people say before, like there's this whole debate about the meat and the vegetables. I think it should be a balance, but it's like, we as humans, I guess a person either reads this or comes to this conclusion on their own, whatever it is. It's like we as humans are not designed to eat vegetables. Like, we don't have the teeth for it. We don't have the digestive system for it or whatever. It's like the canine teeth are there for like meat or whatever. I mean, you hear
Mm,
all these like crazy things. I don't know if there's any science behind this or not, but it's like, it, I mean, I'll just be completely transparent here. I don't eat a lot of like green leafy vegetables. I do in a
yeah.
supplement form, and I don't know if
Okay.
maybe that's the way to cheat. You know what I mean?
hmm
I take athletic greens, and that's got like all the the whole stuff. I mean, I have a salad every once in a while, but like to me, a salad is not really efficient. You know what I mean? It's not like there's very few calories in a salad. And it's like if I'm going to eat, 3,500 to 4,000 calories a day, I'm going to have like a boatload of lettuce over here that I'm trying to like I mean, you know what I mean? It's not really an efficient thing to me.
I don't have anybody eat salads. I don't like salads.
Yeah.
I have people eating specific things for like liver health, like cruciferous vegetables, or for gut health, the gut health function, prebiotic fiber rich foods like garlic, onions, leeks, artichokes, asparagus, those types of things. Purely for, like I said, the fiber, the prebiotic nature of them,
Hmm.
and the plant compounds that can be beneficial to the body. And I think that everybody needs to find a diet that works for them. I'm not going to
Right.
come on here and say you should eat all of these foods, but then you try to eat them and it makes you unhappy. It makes you feel like crap for some reason, which there's probably something going on there that we would look at. But I think you should find a diet that makes you feel happy, but also healthy.
Yep.
Because if you think that the carnivore diet's gonna fix everything, but then you eat meat every day and you dread it, you're like, oh, I just want to have a piece of bread. Like I would just be so much happier if I could have that piece of bread. That emotional happiness might actually be better for you than than the suffering of eating the meat all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think this is a good place to bring this in. So let's talk about diet for a minute, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. It's not understood to the degree that it should be, because it's very important. To me, and I think most people, if you have a very high carb lunch, or a high carb meal early in the day, you're going to probably feel lethargic throughout the rest of the day. Ideally, I try to fast in the morning. I don't usually eat until like 4 hours after I wake up, sometimes 5, sometimes 2 or 3, depends on the day. But I try to do around 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. But if I were to have like a sandwich or something, like some very heavy carbs for that first meal, I wouldn't get anything done the rest of the day. Like I'd be like absolutely useless, because I would feel the carb crash. And that's why, for me personally, and I know other people who feel this way, I try to put most of my, dense, heavy carbs, the breads or whatever, towards the end of the day, because it helps with sleep and that kind of stuff. But again, whatever works for you. But also too, something that's fascinating to me is like, every once in a while I'll be in the gym and I'll like overdo it. And I don't usually like get injuries or whatever, but I might feel like a joint pain, which I take very seriously. Muscle pain is a little bit different, but I take joint pains very seriously. And so it's always fascinating to me that the combination of like a cold plunge or a red light bed, which the gym has, or a very like high protein, high fat meal, like a steak, like a ribeye steak with like fat, like a lot of fat on it. It's crazy to me how those things will help an injury. To me, this is my experience. And it's just like, I don't know what it is in a heavy dose of steak. Like, I don't know if it's the fat or the protein, or like, I guess there's got to be collagen involved some kind of way if it's helping with the joints. I don't know, but it's like, it's fascinating to me that that's like a very, like, steak and eggs. I'm convinced that steak and eggs is the healthiest meal you can have. I mean, that's based on my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like too, if you tell people, like, you can't even tell people a diet, because if you say like, okay, eat this, and this, then you have to narrow down the source of it, like where it's coming from, like is it heavily processed? Is it meat from like a McDonald's? Because that's probably going to be very different from a meat that you would go get at a grocery store. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like the source of the diet is like a bigger problem than the diet itself, because that's only part of the problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I take all my clients through all of that stuff. I mean, it's a lot of information to learn, but once you learn it, it's going to help you the rest of your life, right? So it's like, looking at every single packaged food that you buy and looking at the ingredients list and understanding like what is actually in this food. Are there chemicals in here? There's so many hidden names for sugars. There's like over 70 or 100 different names for sugar that people just don't even understand, don't know how to read a nutrient label. All that stuff's going to cause inflammation and create things like the joint pain, right? Choosing the 100% grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised meats over the grain-fed ones. Choosing the pasture-raised eggs over the regular cage-free eggs. Right. So yeah, those are all great points about the quality of the food being very important, as well as the what exactly you're eating.
Right. And I feel like I'm kind of hopeful because I'm a very big fan of Robert Kennedy Jr. and what he's doing in his philosophy and what he's, the future that he's trying to bring. Because I think health, we can talk about finance, we can talk about economics, we can talk about everything. But I think health, it's obvious that health has been ignored in this country. And if you go to a foreign country and you look at an ingredient list and it's like half of what it is in the US, and there are literal things that are illegal in another country that are like heavily just like out there in our food, I think that's a problem, and I think it needs to be addressed. So I don't know if you know this app or not. There's an app, I think it's called Yuka, Yuka. I don't know if you're familiar. I know there's several others that's similar to this, but if you scan a barcode of your food, it'll tell you like the potential health hazards and why it might be a health hazard, whether it's a dye or an additive or whatever. Right. And I've been using that thing, man. And it's fascinating how bad some of that food actually is out there per these apps or whatever, What's
been something that's been most fascinating to you or most surprising?
I'm kind of disappointed, man, because I like it. I like the packs of beef jerky. You know what I mean? It's like it's like a dense protein, but it's like first of all, it has soy in it, which I don't have a reaction to soy, but I know soy is not good, especially for hormones and stuff like that. So I'm weird. Okay, I'll go to like an Asian restaurant and like it'll be fantastic food, and I'll ask for no soy on the the whatever, the hibachi or whatever I get, and it's like what's wrong with this guy? Well, but I mean I know people do that too because celiac is like a sensitivity to soy, but I don't have a problem with celiacs, and I'm still asking for no soy because I know the what it does. But it's like the beef jerky was one. What was another one? I like those the packs of like the trail mix. This like the whatever the blue package is, it's like the stuff. And I've noticed like on some, I used to eat the every once in a while I would get like a bag of the Lay's potato chips. Absolutely terrible. There's some potato chips out there that are like healthier. I don't know how. I think they're the air fried or whatever. Anyways, there's like different varieties. What was another one that I was a big fan of? I don't really eat a lot of like candy or whatever, but I just for giggles, I just did it one day with a pack of M&Ms. That was a mistake because M&Ms have all the dye in it and everything else. Like,
and the sugar.
Yeah.
There's like, I don't remember. I made a Halloween post about this recently, but it was something like 40 or 50 grams of sugar, like some astronomical amount. I mean, we should have less than 20 to 15 grams of added sugar, and you eat a little bit of M&Ms and you're going to hit that in 2 seconds when you eat that handful of M&Ms. And yeah, the chips and all that stuff, usually the seed oils, right? You can find the healthier chips now that have the avocado oil in it or the coconut oil. Those are the ones you want to look for. If you want beef jerky, get some Chomps. The Chomps beef sticks are amazing. That's grass-fed beef, and that's it in the collagen casing.
What's this called? How do you spell this?
Chomps, CHOMPS.
I'm gonna have to look at this because I do like beef jerky, man. It's a quick, convenient snack or meal. Okay, sugar. I want to come back to sugar because I think that's a big thing. But so this app that I have, the Yuka, I think it's YUKA. It also does like I guess you would call them
self-care products.
Yeah, like
self-care.
Shampoos and stuff like that. And that was a whole nother rabbit hole I went down. I was like, all right, well, let me go through my shower and like, look, I am so weird. I scanned everything in my bathroom and everything in my kitchen, everything in my gym bag. Some supplements it does, some it doesn't. I have a pack of Element right here, the hydration pack. I'm pretty sure it does this. This was okay, but it's like 3 ingredients. But I went through my shower and did all the shampoo and the soap and everything. And you would actually be surprised, man, like how much stuff out here is like in the soaps that you put on your skin. They then get absorbed into your skin. And this app doesn't do it. There might be one that does, but I wish I could find one for clothes because there's a huge debate on clothes, the material that the clothes are made out of.
I like to shop at I'm sorry, I don't know if they have guys' clothes. It's called Pact, PACT.
Okay.
And that's one of the many companies now that makes all 100% organic GOTS certified. You want to look for GOTS certified, GOTS, and that would be some of the cleanest stuff out there. But yeah, that's another thing you do need to think about. And if you're going to pick and choose, the athletic wear is going to be the most important stuff because you're sweating.
Right.
And you're going to be absorbing those PFAs and those chemicals into, well, for a woman more specifically, into the vaginal area, which is much more delicate and like readily available to absorb all of that. And even for a male, you are going to absorb that stuff into your skin as you're sweating too.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. Athletic wear. So what is it? Polyester? Is that the bad one? There's like one that's like really, really bad for you. I can't remember. What is it? There's polyester.
Well, they have PFAs in them usually, like especially the athletic wear because it's PFAs are forever chemicals. So it's going to help that, like the Lululemon stuff that came out. Right. Lululemon brags that their products last so long. Well, why do they last so long? Why are they so good? Because they have these forever chemicals in them. And those forever chemicals get into your body. So yeah, I think instead of an easy swap would be just starting with a couple of maybe just like the bottoms, like your workout bottoms, and doing the GOTS certified 100% organic stuff. And then over time, maybe slowly get working up into the tops. And just really focusing on the stuff you sweat in because it can be really challenging and very expensive to go and switch out your whole wardrobe.
Yeah. Take note, ladies, paying $100 to get poisoned is not a good trade-off.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. It's like, but it's like, okay, now that we're here, now that we're all aware of this, it's going to take time to like filter all the, like you're talking about, years of like developing the right, like good clothes that fit well, or that like, wick moisture, or that like are stylish or whatever. Like it took us however long it was to get. I was a 90s baby. And so I remember like I was born in the early 90s. So I remember in the late 90s, like what the fashion was, and then the drastic change to the 2000s, then the 10s, now we're in the 20s. And it's like, it took us years to get to this point. Okay. And then now we're like, okay, we might've messed up, because we're here now, and like there's all these things in the clothes, and like now we have to go back and like and it's going to take a minute. But like I don't think that's an excuse to just not be aware of it. Well, I'm sorry, what were we going to say?
Well, no, I'm just going to say it is very overwhelming. And so for anybody listening, I think the worst thing is to get really, really scared about everything, because the emotion of fear is going to increase your cortisol and stress levels. And we're just going to create more inflammation in our bodies by being in this like stress response all the time and freaking out about every little thing. So like take a deep breath, take a step back, and then focus on some of the bigger things that you're like. I think some of the biggest things to focus on toxin wise is your water, right? You're drinking that every single day. If you don't have extremely clean water, you are putting it directly into your body, right? Heavy metals, pesticides, pharmaceutical drugs that get into the water.
Plastics.
So the plastics. Yep. So that's a really big one. And then starting to switch out some of your nutrition stuff, and then kind of going down the line from there. But it does take time.
Yeah, I've always thought about it like death of 1,000 cuts. Like you can't stop all the cuts, but like you can minimize. If it's really important to you to have those Lululemon or whatever, is that what it's called, Lululemon? If that's really important to you to have those very expensive, overpriced for what they are, gym pants, like then that's fine. Maybe you can compensate by like looking at some of this other stuff. But I mean, yeah,
going in the sauna, like sweating it out, without the Lululemon.
Right. Yeah, because you don't. Yeah, the skin contact, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know, man. You can't. Because you will drive yourself crazy if you try to look at every single piece. Like, okay, I drink water every single day. This is Deer Park, and it's in a plastic bottle, obviously. And so, I don't know. This is pretty cold right now, but like, I drink it at room temperature really usually, but it's pretty cold right now. I don't know what happened to this bottle before it got to me. I don't know if it sat in a truck in a hot summer month and like, it was just all the plastics just kind of went inside of it. But even if it didn't, I mean, this is a plastic container that the water is in, you know what I mean? So like unless I take this water and put it in a filter that's going to filter out the microplastics and then drink that from a container that's not plastic, like I'm not going to filter out the plastics, you know what I mean? So I don't know, maybe I'm just going to have to look at other areas to compensate for the cut that's going to give me, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's just how I look at it, because you can't filter out, pun intended. You can't filter out everything,
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I want to ask you why you don't just get a stainless steel water bottle and fill it up personally. But yeah, I think if there's some minor guilty pleasures or things that are convenient, but you're doing 90% or 80 to 90% of everything else well, but you have this 10 to 20% where you're like, okay, yeah, but like I have my nails done right now. Sometimes I never get them done for years, but I decided recently these things are toxic. And I'm like, you know what? I really like getting my nails done. I'm doing everything else right now. I'm gonna put some toxins on my fingers this week, basically. So like I do it too. I'm a human being who has my guilty pleasures, right? So there's balance to it.
Now I'm curious, why the stainless steel bottle? What's up with that?
Stainless steel or glass would be best, so that you don't get the plastics or any sorts of chemicals into the water.
But if I just take the bottle and pour it into a stainless steel container, it still has the plastics in it, right? If it's sat there, if it's been stored in it?
This is reverse osmosis water with minerals added back in.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say the only other option would be to get a filter, like, I guess, and run tap water or whatever through it. I mean, if I really wanted to be analytical about it and just like precise, I could just take the bottled water and run it through a reverse osmosis filter. But like
sure.
I mean, I think Dasani uses, like it'll tell you on the back, like this is spring water, but it'll tell you on the back how it's filtered. And I'm pretty sure most of the bottled water is reverse osmosis, but then it's still stored in the plastic container. So it's like, what good does that do?
Exactly.
as far as
Yeah.
plastics go.
The particles do get in the water. There's studies that show that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people think I'm crazy. Again, tinfoil hat. I might as well just keep it on at this point. But it's like if I have a bottle and I have my phone, that's like I don't want to have my phone sit directly next to a bottle or some sort of electronic, because I feel like the 5G radiation. I feel like that's a thing, man.
Okay.
I mean,
Wait, this is new. I haven't heard this yet.
Okay, but so if you have this phone has 5G, well, it's 4G right now, but it's got five. Look, I'm not going to put it on this side of the table. I'm going to put it under here. It's got 5G or 4G or whatever it is, and you can't tell me that a radio tower or a satellite or wherever this is that this comes from comes to your phone and it doesn't have some sort of like environment around it that's radioactive, at least to some degree. If you put it, okay, so for years. And this was before the data. This was before 5G and all that. But it's like when you put it when you talk on the phone, you put it to your ear or whatever, they said that was not good to have your phone sitting there next to your ear. Mm-hmm. So why does that not translate to a bottle of water or food or whatever else that's sitting right next to your phone? I mean, that's something to think about, man. And then now with like the 5G, and it looks like it's just going to go up and up and up, 6G, 7G, whatever. It's like that has to have some kind of effect.
That's a really good point. And if you think about what's the guy's name who did the experiments on the water where he said like love and gratitude and all these nice things to the water, and then it changed the molecular structure of it?
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could be very right with that.
I think that's even a different thing, because I think that's like a sound. That's like a sound spectrum, like a spectrum of sound.
What's frequency?
Right. Yeah. Well, frequency. Exactly. That would be the professional way to refer to it. Not spectrum of sound or whatever that means. But it's like, but seriously, man, you can't okay. And then another thing is Bluetooth.
Well, because EMFs are electromagnetic frequency, right? So it's just a different type of frequency.
Yeah, but I use Bluetooth every day. That explains a lot. And then you have to think too, like most people keep their phone in their pocket, which is like right next to the reproductive organs, like right next to, a source of like a lot of hormones and stuff like that. Has to have some sort of effect, man.
Have you ever looked up EMF, like pictures of x-rays with people who keep their phone in their pocket?
I have not.
Do you have a computer?
Yeah. I can actually, if you have a picture, I can we can screen share whoever. Here, let me see. What's it called?
Let me see if I can find it.
Oh, here we go here's the chair situation.
I don't know if I can find it right now. Oh no, the chair's gonna fall.
What's it called?
I've just looked at x-rays, but x-rays from EMFs and phones in pocket. Let's see if this comes up. I'll find it and send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. It also depends on what browser you're using too, or what search engine.
Yeah, I'm on Google. Probably not the best option to be using.
The biggest technology company in the world, probably not.
Of course,
there's no problems.
I'm like, that's weird. Last time I Googled this, I got different images.
God, man, you got your agent is over here listening hard to you, man. He's like, nah, she's not putting this information out today.
Is Google's listening right now?
Man. Anyways, okay, so we were talking about sugar. I want to go back to sugar.
Okay.
Because I don't think people realize how bad sugar is. Okay, so professionally, what do you see with sugar? Like, do you see sugar related to a lot of these? I mean, I guess it's maybe hard to say like the exact cause, but do you see it being a big factor in a lot of this stuff?
So many things. So most of the people that I work with, I'm going to speak for my client population, is they're coming to me with autoimmune diseases, right? Where within a lot of those autoimmune diseases, we see candida overgrowth in the body and like parasites, gut dysbiosis, all this stuff going on, which is usually triggered by what? There's other things, but usually eating a lot of carbs and sugars, right? Okay. So we're feeding the candida through eating more and more sugar, more and more carbs, higher refined carbohydrates. We've got that story. We've got the story of all this rise with women with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, where we have cysts on the ovaries, we have really low progesterone, we have high androgens, like these women younger and younger, just like a mess with their hormones. That is typically an inflammatory driven condition, usually with blood sugar dysregulation. And then we have the rise of things like diabetes and metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, all of this stuff triggered by what? Eating more and more sugar, carbohydrates, processed foods. So there's a lot of ways it's affecting the body, affecting our microbiome. And we are so addicted to these products that we're eating because sugar is directly addictive. It's spiking your dopamine when you're eating that sugar. So you're going to go back for more and more and more. So we have the addictive side mentally with the dopamine, and then we have the addictive side with the gut dysbiosis, where once that candida starts overgrowing, now it's like screaming to your brain, feed me more sugar. So we reach back into the cookie jar, not understanding why we need more sugar. So every time we are consuming like a lot of carbohydrates and sugars, we are spiking our glucose. We have this blood sugar dysregulation that causes inflammation in the body. That inflammation over time with consistency will lead to the PCOS, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and all sorts of different inflammatory conditions.
Okay. So, all right. So when you say sugar, are you talking about like the sweet, like what makes food sweet? Are you talking about like, is it what's it called when it's like the I guess glucose in the food? Are we talking about that? Are we talking about two different things here? Is that the same thing or? Because I know there's like there's like sugar, there's like table sugar, which is like in candy and stuff like that. But then there's like blood sugar, which is like a different thing. And
yeah, there's a difference here. Like there's let's focus on blood sugar dysregulation first really quickly. So you can dysregulate your blood sugar, but not necessarily be eating a lot of like candy and stuff like that. Right. There's really simple ways to actually fix your blood sugar that involve the order that you eat your food. So like eating your fibrous veggies first and then your protein and fats, and then saving, let's say you have like a nice slow digesting complex carb like a sweet potato on your plate. If you eat that last in your meal, and maybe if you do want to have some fruit for dessert or something, as long as you're eating those after that, the fiber and proteins and fats, that actually drops that glucose spike. If you go on a walk after you eat a meal, blunts that high glucose response, or do any sort of physical movement. If you eat during daylight hours, if you eat, let's say you eat at like 11 p.m. or midnight, you're more insulin resistant. So you're going to have a crazier glucose spike, going to be more dysregulated. So there's like little lifestyle hacks to where you can be, there's some people who eat like a generally healthy diet, but they just kind of do all those things wrong. They eat at weird hours. They don't sleep well. They don't really exercise. They have all these just other lifestyle factors that create metabolic dysfunction. And then on the other side, you have that sugar that you're talking about, right? Like the candy, the cookies, the cakes. Right. There are refined things that's a little bit different. That's like, yeah, if you're eating added sugars and you're consuming, like we talked about, that handful of M&Ms that has, who knows, over 20 grams of sugar in it in one serving, that's going to be a problem if you're doing that every day.
Okay. So I knew that, that walking after a meal, I knew that it was, I knew that it helped you digest the meal, but what you're saying is it can help blunt the spike, the blood sugar spike. Okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, think about it, because glucose is how we utilize or helps us produce energy, or we're using that for energy, right? So if we put our body into motion right after we eat, then that's going to we're going to utilize that glucose immediately.
Okay. Okay. So when we talk about like the sugar that's in food, I think it's pretty self-explanatory why that's a problem, the candy or whatever. And then we talk about the blood sugar spiking because of what we eat. Like it's not like just because there's an absence of like processed sugar in the meal doesn't mean the blood sugar isn't going to spike based on what you eat. It can be, high, like high carbs or whatever it is.
Right.
Okay.
And you can have other metabolic dysfunction going on. So you could have not enough chromium in your body, or you could have not enough B vitamins. You could not be working out, like if you're eating a healthy diet, but you never move your body, right? Those types of things will impact your insulin and glucose response.
Okay. I wanted to ask you something about skin, because I don't know if you know who Andrew Huberman is.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. So I love his podcast.
So good.
So he made the connection between the immune system and the gut, but then he was like, you could also tell, and I'm paraphrasing in layman's terms right here, but he said you can also tell a lot about a person's immune system by their skin health. And so I think, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I think he said one can influence the other, like your skin can influence gut health or vice versa. Which it sounds like from what we talked about earlier, it sounds like gut health is like a major contributor to a lot of these things, that like these autoimmune conditions, right?
Correct.
Okay. So all right. So am I understanding this correctly, or am I kind of wrong here? Is like taking care of the skin, is that something that is going to help us with the gut health, or is that backwards? Is it like the gut health helps the skin? Because I would have to go back and listen to that episode that he had on that, but I know there's a connection. I just don't know which direction it is.
The gut health helps the skin for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you go back to your toxin argument where you're talking about scanning all your products in your bathroom, if there's a lot, let's say you're using like the worst, most toxic lotion and you're putting that on your body every day, there could be compounds in that could impact your gut in some way, I'm sure. But yeah, typically it's like, do you have candida overgrowth? And now that's gotten actually onto your skin. So now you're having like psoriasis or fungal infections, fungal infections on the scalp, acne, because you have this bacteria overgrown in your gut. And so that's creating this inflammation in your skin. It's the gut that's really the foundation of it all.
So interesting story. One time I had I don't know what you call it. Like a infection on my arm, a skin infection on my arm, but I got it from doing martial arts, like rolling around on the mats or whatever.
Like ringworm?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And so I went to a doctor, long story short, they gave me some antifungal, and I went to the pharmacist and I was asking if I could take the antifungal with the probiotic that I was taking, because it's got probiotics, prebiotics, a lot of stuff in it. And he was like, well, that might be part of your problem, like this stuff, these supplements you're taking. And I was like, well, I don't know about that, because I mean, I know what I was doing like 3 days ago, which was rolling around on the mats with like several different people, and everybody was sweating and everything. So like I'm pretty sure that's what this is. But but I think from what you're saying, his philosophy was it was grounded, because if there is an overgrowth of, what did you say it was?
Fungus, bacteria, any sort of microbes, candida. Yeah,
candida. Okay. Yeah. So that could cause a skin infection. On the okay, so I guess I was just trying to make the connection of what he said and what you just said. Let me ask you this, and I know you got to get out of here. Let me ask you this first. If okay, so do you practice yourself? Are you familiar with, or do you recommend to people like the very basics of like circadian biology, like sunlight, sleep? What's your thoughts on that, like professionally, just like with what you do?
I think it's so important. If I'm being honest, I put not all the way above nutrition, but sleep should be like top up there, because I say this all the time, which is if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. If you're not sleeping, you're not healing. Your body's producing your human growth hormone at night. You have a certain rhythm to your thyroid hormone, which controls your metabolism, your hair, skin, nails, all these different functions. That's released at a certain point within the morning time. It's your immune system is going to be repairing more. Your gut's going to be repairing more. You've got your lymphatic system, which is more of the lymphatic system in the brain that's flushing out while you're sleeping. So if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. And within that, we implemented all these artificial lights into our life, and we've completely dysregulated ourselves. And we know that, like I was talking about before with the insulin resistance, even, right? Like people are eating later at night, people are staying up later at night, but now we're seeing this dysregulation in hormones increasing, autoimmune diseases increasing, all these problems. So it's so important. I have I have my clients and myself like wake up in the morning, don't look at your phone, get outside, get your 5 to 20 minutes of sunlight, kind of depending upon the weather. Hydrate yourself with electrolytes and water. Wait 90 minutes before you have any caffeine. Eat your breakfast first. Get outside as much as you can during the day. Like even if you're just taking a 5-minute walk after lunch and a 5-minute walk before dinner, like we can all make a little bit of space to just even pop ourselves outside of the door and just stand there for, even if it's just 3 minutes, like we have the space where we can create that space in our lives to get that. And then before bedtime, I'm really big on wind down routines. Like I have, what's the company? Bond Charge lights all through my house, which are the true like blue light blocking red lights. So they're in my bedroom, they're in my living room. I have their little night lights. I have the Raw Optics glasses that are completely red so that I'm protecting my eyes in addition to the lights in my home. So those all go on after sunset, especially at least like a minimum of 2 hours before bed, because if we have any, whether it's the TV, if we turn on a light in the house, if we have, your phone, if you're exposing that light to your eyes before bed, you're suppressing your melatonin production. So then you're not going to sleep as well. And we're kind of setting our whole rhythm off. I could go on for literally like 2 hours about this.
Dude, it's so important, man. Like, I know that you said that you're not going to put it above diet, but I will. And so the reason I do is because you can go longer without food than you can without sleep. Like if you try to go 24 hours without food, if you've never done it before, it might be kind of difficult, but it's actually doable. If you go 24 hours without sleep, man, you're going to be a completely different person. I mean, you can do it maybe a day. You might be able to do it a day. You're not going 48 hours without sleep. You can do a 48-hour fast. Like most people in healthy conditions can do a 48-hour fast, but you can't go 48 hours without sleep.
Yeah. No, one night of not getting enough sleep completely changes you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't get that sleep back the same way as if you just sleep a little bit extra the next night. Like it's really not the same. Directly, impacts immune system, mood, all sorts of different things, your glucose regulation.
And see, I love this because some people think I'm crazy. If I take a shower really late at night, if it's just been a busy day or whatever, and it's a late shower, I'll use a very dim light in the bathroom while I'm washing with my like mid-grade chemical-free Yucca confirmed like body products or whatever. And so like it's real, man, because I sleep completely different. Like it's a completely different sleep if I do that versus if I eat too close to bed or if there's too much bright light before bed or whatever. It's completely different, and I can tell the difference. This morning I was outside and it was about 8 o'clock or so, and I had the sunlight. I was seeing the while I was in the cold plunge, 45 degrees. And so like I was doing that simultaneously. And like, I am convinced, man, if you could bottle that up and sell it to people, like what that does for you, you'd make millions. Because anyway, we're not gonna get into the cold plunge. That's all. And I've taught extensively about that. Listen, so I want to do one thing. Well, let me do this first. Where can you be found? Do you have a website, social media, anything?
Yes. My company's name is Natural Health Rising. So naturalhealthrising.com. I'm pretty active on Instagram, the same name, Natural Health Rising. I'm on TikTok, YouTube. I also have a podcast. So yeah, anywhere there people can find me.
Okay. And if you send links for all that stuff, I'll attach them to these videos when they come out. One last thing I ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, whether it's a professional lesson, personal, something you're comfortable sharing, what do you think that would be? I know it's hard to say the most important, but maybe one of the most important.
There's so many things that so many lessons. I'm going to say this isn't necessarily a specific moment, but this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest lessons because it has transformed the way I move through my life. And that would be learning to step out of victim mode, to start to take control over my life and stop living in the same stories again and again. Because if you are in victim mode, everything else or everything in your life is everyone else's fault. You think things are happening to you and not for you. And when you get out of victim mode, you start taking responsibility for everything in your life, and you start to realize that your reactions and your reality are really all your own making. and that you are powerful enough to take control over those things and make changes in your life. And so then you start believing that life is happening for you and instead of to you. And that just changes everything.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Because I mean, the victim mentality perpetuates itself because it does put the power in somebody else. It puts that power of change in somebody else. You know,
Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to?
Ooh.
I was kind of all over the place.
Let's see. Well, we didn't really get too deep into, I don't think we even talked about emotions in our health or stress and trauma
We
and
did not.
disease, which are big, big things for me. So I could go on those for another 30 minutes, but if we want to wrap up, I'll just say, what can I say about this? Don't underestimate the things that have happened in your life and how they impact your health. Because I see a lot of people getting in a rabbit hole about all the stuff we talked about: nutrition, sleep, exercise, the supplements. If they're freaking out, like, what's the next supplement I got to take? And if we just pause and say, hey, how are you feeling emotionally? Like, do you know how to feel and process your emotions in a healthy way? A lot of people don't. So they start bottling those things up. They start suppressing or repressing things, which impacts our health. Hey, have you dealt with that time from your past when you were a kid when Sally pushed you off the swing set and like you kind of repressed this thing, and now you have this trauma in your life, or you grew up in a chaotic household and you have this trauma from your past that has wound up impacting your nervous system. And so now you're living in a fight or flight state or a freeze state more frequently. And that, all of that completely can suppress our immune system, affect all of our organs and systems, can lead to chronic disease. There's lots of studies on this stuff. Like, the more adverse childhood experiences that you've gone through, the more likely it is that you'll develop an autoimmune disease. So I would just encourage people to think about that stuff and reach out for support in those areas, whether that's an EMDR therapist to work through trauma or some sort of other really great therapist. I'm a really big believer in somatic therapies. I help my clients with somatic breath work, with different somatic practices as well, to actually like release and process the emotions and things coming up, to actually get it out of the body so that we're not holding on to it anymore.
Yeah, that is a very big cliff to leave us just hanging off of right there. Do you have like another 15 minutes to get into that? Are you good? Like, are you good on time, or do you gotta go?
I can go into it. Yeah, we can go into it a little bit.
Yeah, because this like we can't just stop right there. Man. If you got, I promise. Like, okay, it is 4:16 where I'm at. 15 minutes and we'll be wrapped up or less.
We can do that.
Because I'm very interested in this, man. Because like, so I was talking to a person a while back, Zachariah Frank, and he mentioned to me that there's like a connection between certain emotions, like long-term negative emotions, and cancers. So like, I might not have this exactly right, but like anger or some sort of regret, there's like a connection with colon cancer, like letting go of things, like, letting go of the past, whatever. And there's like all these different connections between cancers and long form negative, I guess, emotions. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So like I said, well, first I want to talk about why this can happen. I think that's important for people to know, is when you're a child, if you grew up in a household where your caregivers, either they suppress, like maybe they didn't show their emotions in front of you, maybe they like went and hid it in the bedroom, so you grew up thinking like, oh, if I'm feeling angry or sad, like, what do I do with that? I don't know. I've never seen my parents or caregivers express that in a certain way. Or maybe you started expressing anger and you started throwing a temper tantrum and your parents came up to you and they were like, hey, don't do that. Okay, cool. So what do I do instead? How do I get this anger out of my body? So you weren't taught on a different way. They didn't say, hey, instead of throwing a temper tantrum, how about you go over here and punch the pillow and yell into the pillow, and then we talk about your emotions, right? So that was missing from a lot of people's lives. Or the other thing that happens is they see their parents or caregivers fighting or outbursting. And so it's all like this buildup of unhealthy processing or not understanding like what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you grow up as an adult not knowing what to do with these big emotions. And so most people will shove them down, not deal with them, repress them, suppress them. Maybe they do have outbursts because you've been holding on to it for so long. So then you get into a fight with someone that you loved, and it's like, oh, I didn't want that to happen, but it did anyways. So that's kind of where it can stem from. And I think it's really important that people learn how to process them and how to feel them in a healthy way. And just like you were saying, there are some correlations, like the liver is typically correlated with anger and frustration. Or maybe if you hold on to resentment about something from your past, like a breakup or something like that, you just can't let it go. And anger has also been associated with an increased risk of hypertension and cardiovascular disease, which makes sense, right? If you're angry, you raise your blood pressure. And so if you're angry all the time, you're going to get hypertension or cardiovascular disease. Another one is the lungs are correlated with sadness and grief. So if you don't process that sadness and grief, maybe a loved one dies and you just don't know how to move through that, you could develop something as extreme as lung cancer or maybe asthma or a chronic cough. That can be common. The heart, there's a literal syndrome called broken heart syndrome, which is also intense emotions or grief or shock that can lead to that heart muscle weakness. The kidneys is typically correlated to excess fear. So you might see like low kidney function on blood work, like your EGFR. And what else? The spleen is worry and overthinking. But yeah, there's different correlations to all that stuff.
Do you know I think I asked Zach this too. Do you know a connection to the brain, like brain cancers and emotion? Because I'd be curious to talk about that one.
I don't, but I would take a guess about just generalized stress. Because if do you have you ever felt really overwhelmed and stressed and your brain just doesn't work?
Yeah, well, it's like, it's
everything kind of shuts down.
Yeah, that does make sense. Well, yeah, because the reason I'm kind of stumped on this is because you think of like stress, and I think this has been debunked. I don't think this is a real thing, but for the longest time it was like stress and stomach cancer. You know what I mean? Like stress causes ulcers and that kind of thing. And I think since we were talking about gut, it's a certain form of bacteria in the gut, in the stomach, right, that causes the ulcers and all that. I mean, I don't think it's stress like people thought it was.
Well, H. pylori in the stomach is correlated. That can, in a small amount of the population, can trigger ulcers and stomach cancer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. H.
But
pylori.
A lot of people too, though. Well, I guess it depends on the person, because a lot of people too, when they get stressed, they have some sort of gastric discomfort, whether it's upset stomach or nausea or whatever. So I guess it would make sense if there's a relationship to it.
Well, the nervous system, right? So, you're impacting your vagus nerve and you're sending your body into usually like a fight or flight response. And the vagus nerve is that long nerve that goes all the way from up here, the neck region, all the way through the chest and down into the belly. And so when we have a dysregulated nervous system, we're going to have that, or we can have gut issues, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, etc. Are you familiar with the polyvagal theory?
No.
So our nervous system, the polyvagal theory, breaks it up into three main categories. So category one, or the kind of the bottom of it, is the ventral vagal part of the nervous system, which is feeling safe and social safety. And this is what a lot of people understand as the parasympathetic nervous system, or they call it rest and digest. In rest and digest, this is where everything is like a well-oiled machine. So your immune system is strong, your body is actually producing enzymes and it's digesting your food when you eat, it's absorbing the nutrients because you're in rest and digest, right? Your body can heal, you feel like you can communicate openly with others, you feel safe, you feel calm and connected. Then we have the sympathetic state. So a lot of people know that one too. They know it as fight or flight. This is where our body is perceiving stress or danger. So this is a protective mechanism in case a dog chases us or we get into a fight or a car accident, something like that. If we're in this state, typically people are feeling anxious, worried, fearful, irritated, or angry. when we get into this state, the immune system completely drops. Like it's weakened. Our body doesn't care about digesting our food anymore. So we're not absorbing our nutrients. You're not nourishing yourself if you eat. Your blood pressure and your heart rate increases. Our third state is dorsal vagal state. This is like freeze or shut down. So we feel overwhelmed, hopeless, trapped. We start to feel numb, disconnected, shut down. Heart rate slows down. You can dissociate. Everything kind of plummets, like similar to sympathetic state. Your immune system is weak, digestion is down, but then also your blood pressure and everything else is down as well. So we have these three major states that we go through. And that's what I kind of meant. So the vagus nerve is connected to all of this. It can kind of move us through. It's a part of moving us through each of those three states. And so, like I was saying, if somebody is more stressed or anxious, that's that sympathetic state.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going to impact the gut connection, right? And stuff that's going on down there with digestion.
That makes a lot of sense, man. I wish that people had a different philosophy on emotions than what they do. And I think in my experience, it's been mostly men. It's like if it's a negative emotion like sadness or something like that, or some sort of, I don't know how to describe it other than a negative emotion. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like a lot of guys feel like they're not supposed to have that, because that makes them, whatever it makes in their mind, it makes them to have that emotion. But it's like, okay, but if you listen, my thoughts on this has always been, if you listen to what the emotion is trying to teach you about yourself or about the situation, you're not a bad person for having that emotion. Now, if you act on the emotion, if that emotion causes damage to somebody else or to yourself or people around you, that's obviously a bad thing. But it's like there's a message behind it. That's how I feel about it anyways.
Yeah. Well, and emotions are energy. Emotions are energy in motion.
Right.
So when that sadness comes up, if we just stop it, we don't let the tears come, we don't let anything come out, that energy is not moving, right? It's not energy in motion anymore. So it's paused. But yeah, if we can allow ourselves like, oh, I'm feeling something, like it's information, right? Like you said, it's telling me something about my experience right now, but also I need to feel it, whether that's through crying or maybe you need to go to your bedroom and scream into a pillow, or you need to shake it out, or you need to go on a run or get a session with your therapist, whatever it is, but you got to move it, right? And not hold on to it. I don't think emotions are, I use that word a lot too, like negative emotions, but I don't think they're negative. It's like part of the human experience. And I agree, like we should normalize that everybody has them, but we just need to learn how to work with them.
Well, I think a lot of things too, it's just like what a lot of things with the human experience is subjective to the meaning that you give it, it's literally the story that you're telling yourself about what the thing is or why it's happening, or, why you feel the way you do. And that's that whole mental, I guess, health part of it. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But
yeah.
Listen, Rachel, I appreciate it. It's been great. I appreciate you coming here, sharing some wisdom, and appreciate your time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to stop the video really quick, and I'm going to explain to you the upload process and all that good stuff. And then once this thing comes out, I'll send everything to you. But yeah, I definitely appreciate the time. Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.